Wow, there is a lot of drama happening inside the Donald Trump White House and his administration, which could explain some of the hawkish, pro-war, globalist policies that he has been instituting when he's president of the United States, doing a complete 180-degree turn from all the promises he made when he was campaigning. And in this video, we're going to tell you about the inside baseball, the globalists, the war hawks, the Goldman Sachs ghouls, who are pushing not only a very dangerous agenda, but now a policy that will completely change the Middle East and the entire world. Now, of course, this information comes from reporter Mike Cernovich, who previously broke the Susan Rice stories and other stories from his insider sources inside of the White House. And now he is reporting that Saudi Arabia will obtain a massive weapons arsenal, a missile defense system, and also nuclear technology from the United States. Now, according to Cernovich, this U.S. weapons deal with Saudi Arabia is being pushed by H.R. McMaster, Gary Cohn, and Dina Powell, and will be announced sometime in May. Now, allowing Saudi Arabia to build civilian nuclear reactors will have a significant shift in the geopolitical region of the Middle East, since it will dramatically change the power dynamic that's happening right now between Iran and Saudi Arabia. As we know, Iran is forced to get rid of their nuclear program under Obama's Iran nuclear deal, and now if Donald Trump does this, it will completely change the playing field. Now, supposedly David Petraeus, the former CIA head who had his security clearance pulled after leaking classified information to his mistress, is also involved in this deal with McMaster, who, according to Cernovich's sources, has nightly calls with the National Security Advisor. Now, just like Petraeus, Donald Trump's National Security Advisor, H.R. McMaster, also has complete ties to globalists and the Council on Foreign Relations. David Petraeus is also a part of the secretive, elusive Bilderberg Group meeting, and this is what he had to say when I personally came up and asked him what the hell he was doing there meeting in secret with the world's elites under the silence of the mainstream media and complete ignorance from the national public.
General Petraeus? General Petraeus,
Nice.
you got any comment for the American people? What'd you do at this year's Bilderberg meeting?
Hi, Mr. Petraeus. How are you today? Did you have a good ride?
What is he discussing at Bilderberg?
We're getting a shot doing this shit.
Chase that screwball down the street. But regardless, continuing on with this story, David Petraeus is also the chairman of the KKR Global Institute, which of course, surprise, surprise, has financial ties to Dubai and Saudi Arabia. Now, McMaster, Donald Trump's national security advisor, who supposedly is being advised by David Petraeus, is making a lot of significant changes within the National Security Council ever since he took over from Michael Flynn. He is rolling back Michael Flynn's changes to the National Security Council. He is cutting many of the positions created by Michael Flynn, and the most important shift that happened is that McMaster is very hawkish and very anti-Russia. A complete 180-degree turn from the former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn, who was forced out by Donald Trump, who previously made remarks to the extent that the United States should work with Russia in order to defeat radical Islamic terrorists and ISIS together. And now McMaster is pretty much saying, no, let's just go to war with Russia. Now, as we know, McMaster has pushed for troops on the ground inside of Syria, just like Saudi Arabia did last year in 2016, threatening a full-out invasion of the Syrian state. And from all the information we're getting, we're seeing that Petraeus and McMaster have allegedly taken over the entire National Security Council and are the hawkish pro-war representation of the Donald Trump administration. Of course, neoconservative John McCain gives his thumbs of approval for McMaster when Donald Trump named him the National Security Advisor, and as we're talking right now, the two are meeting in Sedona, Arizona. Of course, we have another non-propaganda great intrinsic journalistic piece of work by The Fortune that previously said that John McCain and H.R. McMaster are, quote, among the world's greatest leaders. And that to me is just utterly, completely nuts, since all that John McCain does is pretty much call for war with every country he doesn't like. Well, except for Saudi Arabia. And I think this picture is very telling, coming from the White House, showing Donald Trump with a mum face as McMaster and globalist Gary Cohn meet the Saudi royals inside of the White House. Now, of course, this is just a picture, not a fair representation of the facts, but I think this image speaks for itself. Now, the former Deputy National Security Advisor to Donald Trump, K.T. McFarland, recently resigned from the position, and according to some people, she was forced out by McMaster, the person who replaced K.T. McFarland, who was against a massive ground war in Syria Arabia is no one other than Dina Halib, who is also an interconnected globalist, just like Gary Cohen, who is now also an advisor to President Trump, and of course all have connections to Saudi Arabia and Goldman Sachs. I don't know about you guys, but there's some strange connections being made here. Now, of course, there's also been many news reports about Steve Bannon inside of the White House was being pushed away by Donald Trump and engaging with a turf war with some of these Democrats, Goldman Sachs, pro-war people that Steve Bannon, of course, disagrees with, and also, like KT McFarland, does not support war with the Syrian government. And you would think that would be a common sense thing, since the Syrian government is the one who is fighting radical Islamic terrorists and ISIS in that country. But no. We're also learning that supposedly Dina Powell, Gary Cohen, and H.R. McMaster have made it a priority to get Congress to repeal the Justice Against Sponsors of Terrorism Act, which of course is a law passed by the United States Congress that narrows the scope of the legal doctrine of foreign sovereign immunity when it comes to sponsoring terrorism, and of course would strip Saudi Arabia of any foreign sovereignty immunity and held them accountable for their obvious sponsorship of terrorism that they have been doing for a number of years now. And in other related news, Saudi Arabia was just elected to the UN Women's Rights Commission. So the whole world is completely upside down, not only inside of the Trump administration when it comes to their policy against Saudi Arabia, but now also with the United Nations, assigning a country that doesn't allow women to drive or leave their house without a husband to the Women's Security Council, the most backwards, repressive, misogynistic regime in probably the entire world, is now a part of the UN Women's Rights Council. Saudi Arabia also announced that the Saudi king's son will now be ambassador to the United States. He's also the same person who is doing bombing raids in coordination with the United States against the people of Yemen, which points out another layer of Donald Trump's hypocrisy when it comes to his foreign policy, making the main decision to serve Saudi Arabia with their escalation and costly war that is killing innocent civilians and creating a humanitarian crisis inside of Yemen, a starvation crisis that, of course, in reality does not serve American foreign policy at all, does not make America great again, and from my analysis doesn't even fight radical Islamic terrorists, but goes after Houthis and rebels inside of Yemen that threaten the Sunni-led Saudi Arabian power dynamic in that country. So why is Donald Trump doing this? Pluck do I know, but it makes no sense at all. Other than the obvious, he is just serving Saudi Arabia. And he has done that as President of the United States, approving Saudi Arabia's weapon sales that were previously blocked by Barack Obama because of, you know, the quote, obvious concerns of human rights violations. Trump is also keeping record high Obama-era aid to Israel, even though he sent massive State Department cuts, and all as Israel makes it official that they want to see the destruction of the Syrian state in order to legitimize the Israeli land grab of the Golan Heights region, which has been contested for a number of years between Syria and Israel. You might be asking yourself, this is not really making America great again. This is not really serving the interest of the American people. This is creating more global chaos around the world. This is creating an environment where the United States is acting on the behalf of Saudi Arabia, one of the biggest financiers of terrorism all around the world, and establishing a Sunni Muslim majority hegemony and dominance by Israel, Saudi Arabia, and the United States, which will inevitably create more conflict, more war, more destruction, and of course more radical Islamic terrorists, which will come back and kick the butt of the West. Now, exactly why this is happening, there's really no solid proof or evidence to come to any conclusion. There's many theories out there, but what we're seeing is the same failed policies that were carried out by George W. Bush, Barack Obama, now being carried out by Donald Trump. And even though the evidence of why this is happening is still circumstantial, at least we know how it's happening, which I hoped I proved to you in this video. Let me know what you think in the comment section below, and if you agreed with this video, share it. But I think the bigger picture here is, of course, surrounding the US petrodollar that allows Saudi Arabia to extort so much control over the United States, which ultimately now, for the benefit of the American people, needs to end. Now, as this power dynamic inside of Trump's administration plays out, don't forget to stay tuned to Real Independent Media, as we will be covering every major latest step and development here on youtube.com/wearechange, a truly independent media organization that is financed by you and your donations on patreon.com/wearechange. Don't forget to support your local independent media, because if you don't, we really wouldn't be able to be here and continue our operation. So thank you again from the bottom of my heart. Subscribe, stay tuned, and we're going to have a lot more coming here your way on youtube.com/wearechange.